Hi, I'll be refuting the claim that democracy within the U.S. has failed to properly serve its people. My opponent's secondary claims were that we are not equally represented in this type of government. Second, that the president has imperial-like power. And third, that the judicial branch may be overpowered or simply outlining the judicial branch's power. Starting on the first claim, I'd like to point out that the opposition had oversimplified how bicameral legislature works. And according to the history textbook, We the People, An Introduction to American Politics by Benjamin Ginsberg, he outlines the roles of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So the House of Representatives has 435 seats, and it's catered towards population, so districts in each state, and according to how much population fills each district. And second, the Senate is representative of each state, two per state, obviously, so 100 senators. And he goes into detail about how the House doesn't have enough seats because we have 300 million Americans now instead of 94. And my argument is that every 10 years, there's a redistricting process which makes sure that everyone has equal representation within their district. Furthermore, the House and the Senate have different roles. The Senate represents the entire state on a national level. He also makes a point about taxation without representation, but the fact is he outlines the exceptions rather than looking at the whole. So he says that Washington, D.C. Doesn't get to vote, but they're taxed. And actually, according to the 23rd Amendment, the District of Columbia does have electoral votes in the presidential election. Furthermore, he criticizes the Electoral College, and he says that it's a winner-take-all system. Well, I'd like to point out that it's representative of the people's actual choice. The Huffington Post showed the election results for the last election. They said 51.1% Obama, 47.2% Romney. The electoral votes came out to 332 and 206. And although the percentages aren't spot on, they are showing that the population got the candidate that they voted for. And there are only a handful of exceptions, such as Gore versus George W. Bush in 2004. Moving on to the second claim, he brings up an article from the National Public Radio, and that's written by Alan Greenblatt. It's called "The War Powers Doesn't Work." And the fact of the matter is he highlights the first beginning part of the article, but he fails to identify the rest of the article. And if you read further, it says that the War Powers Act is actually just a political tool so that people opposing the president can gain more political favor. And the fact of the matter is there is no unanimity between the entire Congress saying that he violated these rights. And there's a quote from Louis Fisher, who's a constitutional scholar and past advisor to Congress, and he was cited in this article, and he was talking about the Supreme Court, and he said, 30 of you are saying the president violated the law, and 30 others in an amicus brief are saying he didn't. We're not going to get involved. And so that pretty much undermines that point, because I pull from the same evidence that he made his point from. Finally, I'd like to go on the third claim. He talked about the judicial branch, and he said that the judicial branch, the judges are elected for life, and that they only stay in Congress, or they stay on the board as long as they have good behavior. And he doesn't exactly say why that's a bad thing. He doesn't highlight what are the negative consequences of having them on for life. Furthermore, he comments about their generations not being representative of the American people. And my question is, how does the generation of the Supreme Court actually affect the democratic system of the United States? And second, the lifelong service of the Supreme Court judges, that assumes a lot of things. That assumes that these people, even though they're older, that they're not open to change, or they're unable to adapt to society. And furthermore, their experience on the Supreme Court is completely overlooked, whether or not their past decisions mean anything. And so when you look at all these evidence claims and their grounds and his warrants, it's not conclusive to say that America's democratic system has failed its people. Thank you.
All right, structurally things are pretty clear. You had multiple responses on the first point, and you had pretty clear claims on each of those. You're basically challenging the assumption of the advocate on what defines the democratic process, and I think that you point out the reasonable issues that the advocate seems to have ignored, including the different roles of the House and Senate and the redistricting process. I think that works pretty well. The electoral votes thing, I think, was pretty reasonable, and I think that you're pointing out that it's only happened in a handful of cases that it wasn't the case. It might have been a good idea to present a counterclaim here to talk about why that continues to be important, even if it doesn't represent the majority of the votes. Why we continue to have justification for the role of the states in the Electoral College. I think that there are plenty of arguments on that. That would have, I think, made that argument just a little bit stronger. When you move to point number 2, it's mostly analysis of the advocate's reasoning process, and there's this extensive challenge based on a piece of evidence that you got from their own source, which I think is a good way to go forward on an argument like that, but I'm not sure that the explanation for why it's important is as clear as it should be. On the third point, I thought you had very reasonable challenges to the assumptions that the advocate made. Again, I think there are a couple places where you could have used some evidence to support those conclusions, because it seems like you just take them as a given. I thought you had pretty reasonable explanations of them, but I don't think that it would be hard for you to find a little bit of proof to support some of those points. All right, thank you.